history. But it's actually interesting because what Norrsken says is actually impact and profit go hand in hand. So there's 17 goals that the UN has established as important for a thriving world. So it's a company that has to focus on one of these and that does it through scalable technology. So old school narrative would say, if you want to make money, don't focus on impact. So it's changing this narrative of businesses that work for good can be great money creators. A lot of the conversations in climate is like, how much climate can you really solve by just doing software? And if you really want to have an impact, then you should focus on giant investments that have to do with hardware. The issue there is that VC funding, which is what fuels the startup industry, is focused on returns within 3 to 4 years, sometimes up to 10. But hardware investments mean huge amounts of money that maybe need longer returns.
Hello everyone, welcome to Perspectives, where we dive deep into the minds of those shaping the futures, from founders to change makers, one story at a time. I'm your host, Jaime Balmant, and today I have the pleasure to be talking with someone who sits at the intersection of progress and purpose, Júlia Devin Altès. Júlia is the Growth and Partnership Manager at Norrsken, one of the most exciting and forward-thinking ecosystems for impact entrepreneurs in the world right now. Founded by Klarna's co-founder Niklas Adalbert, Norrsken believes that startups can and should be a source for good. With hubs in Stockholm, Kigali, and Barcelona, with 2 more to come, they've created a platform where impact, innovation, and sustainable ventures are born and backed. Júlia is one of the key minds driving this mission forward, connecting ideas to capital, building bridges between sectors, and escalating with intention. Júlia, thank you so much once again to be with Perspectives. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Before actually we dive into what you do, I would like to know what kind of kid were you growing up?
What kind of kid was I growing up? I don't think I was in any way out of the norm. I think I was just someone who really liked playing outside. I think my childhood, I was lucky, I guess, when I think about now that I live in Barcelona and what it would mean to be a kid here. I also grew up in a city, but just the fact that you could play outside much more. I think I had a lot of unsupervised playing around. We spent a lot of time in the countryside. My dad started by hobby a vineyard, which means a hobby, and not in any way like a grand vineyard, but I just don't think you spend the day, I don't know, getting bored, I think, and playing around, but pretty happy. Yeah, pretty happy childhood.
Were you always interested for climate, sustainability, or nature, or this came up later?
I wouldn't say I was always interested in climate, and even now I would say that it's one of my interests, but I've always been a generalist. And so even now, I'm in Norrsken, and Norrsken is an impact for a hub for impact, but we focus on impact agnostically, so it doesn't only have to be climate, although that naturally takes kind of like a forward role. But I think I was always interested in systems and understanding systems and how they interact with one another, and I was also interested in things that had to do with positive change, even if I didn't know how to word it. But I studied business, I didn't study sustainability. So I think it's more like an interest that I have, but not my main focus.
Yeah, when you say that that it's much more agnostically, if someone does not understand the term, how would you explain that to them?
Yeah, that's a good question, because impact can be used in a million ways, no? And even you can find a lot of companies that might not be impact per Norrsken's terms might say that they have an impact, and it just means that they affect other people. Having an impact just means that you affect other people, and it can just mean then we make wonderful cars that make an impact. Well, impact, so
what kind
the
of
word
impact?
Exactly. So it really depends on the context, what impact means. If you talk about impact through Norrsken's lens, or through the climate lens, but especially through Norrsken's lens, we have a clearer definition because that's what we use for our funds that we invest. That's what we use for our hubs that have these kind of communities, etc. So impact for Norrsken means that you're a company that focuses on one of the UN SDGs. So the United Nations has established 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which span so many areas, from gender equity to access to clean water to climate to biodiversity, etc. So there's 17 goals that the UN has established as important for a thriving world. So it's a company that has to focus on one of these, and that does it through scalable technology. So you could be a company that does this, but you're a corporate company, then you might not be a company that will fit within Norrsken. But for us, impact means that you work towards one of these themes with a scalable technology. But you can also be a company that is a foundation or a nonprofit that does these things and therefore doesn't use scalable technologies, but it just wouldn't fit within Norrsken's perspective. So impact as a whole, I'd probably define it as you're doing something positive and good for one of these 17 areas. And then there's many business models to use to do that. At Norrsken, we focus on startups. So that's when we say with scalable technologies, it means that you use technology in a way that is meant to scale very fast.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
As a growth manager, I'm guessing that you were one of the moderate what kind of company gets the membership or what kind of corporate gets associated with Norrsken.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the main principles that you were looking for a company?
So I think it's exactly applying this definition to the companies that apply. So what it means that I work for growth, it means that I work on the revenue that comes into the house. And to give some context for people who don't understand what Norrsken does, at Norrsken Barcelona, we are a hub which has memberships, and these mean co-working memberships or club memberships for individuals. And then we also have some corporate partners, but these are very curated corporate partnerships, right? So our core focus, though, are memberships. And when we curate members, what it means is we evaluate everyone who applies, and everyone has to fill out a form that says why they want to join, what they do, like what kind of company do you have, what do you work on, what kind of technology do you use. It's an open forum, but if you don't answer some of those questions, we might follow up. And what we're trying to assess is this. One, what is your area of focus? Like, are you working to have, what does your business do? Is it marketing products? Is it cars? Is it electric scooters? Is it carbon accounting? Like, what does your company do? And then what business model do they use to do it? So what we mean by business model is you can pursue anything in this world, but with different business models. Say like, to give you an example, like let's say that we have like a climate startup, a climate company that's trying to approach the well-being of water plants. Okay. If you were a nonprofit, most likely, and it depends, you're not doing it with technology. You're not developing maybe like an app, or you're not developing like scalable technology. It doesn't mean that it's not a super valid business model, but maybe what you're doing is engaging communities to volunteer doing this, or to give you an example. So this is what we mean by business model. What are the means by which you pursue this goal that you're having? And the ones that we focus on, are you a company that's doing this with scalable technologies? And that means usually like some sort of, it can look in many ways, no? But you could have apps, tech in general. So tech companies that focus on businesses that are doing good.
Is there anything that you guys try to avoid, or that you are not looking for? Yeah,
plenty of things. So Norrsken as a whole, like Norrsken Barcelona is part of Norrsken Foundation, as you said, which is a large organization. And Norrsken as a whole has a blacklist of companies, and so we wouldn't work with oil and gas, we wouldn't work with tobacco, we wouldn't work with a whole list of companies. That's like the blacklist, but we also don't come that much into contact because they also don't seek us and we don't seek them. But then there's other companies. So what we're doing here is curating companies to build a community where they can find everything they need to succeed, from capital, know-how, and network, right? So that's what we want startups here to find. So in doing that, we accept impact companies that are startups, but we also accept some companies that are not impact or are not startups because they're necessary for this ecosystem. So to give you an example, investors. They're not a startup, but that's one of the most valuable things that startups can get access to, which is investors, no? There might also be professional services where they're not the majority of our members, but if a company comes in and they're like a recruiting company that focuses on startups, well, that's another pain point that startups have. So we might also accept a company that does recruiting if they're not a traditional recruiting company, right? So if you approach us and you're a very old school recruiting company that focuses on corporates, you're just not a fit, so it doesn't make sense for you to be here. And another example is there are some startups or some companies that may not be impact startups, but that also add value. So one example is we have an accelerator based here in the house called S2X Speed. And so they're an accelerator. So they're not a startup themselves, but the fact that they bring hardware companies here and that they are helping other companies grow, that's a great example. So they're based here as a team. So in a way, it's like if you had to design what the perfect environment was for startups working in impact, we try to have that lens when we evaluate companies that come in.
So it's kind of different tiers of membership or different tiers of companies.
Yeah,
the system will be categorized in a different way.
So we have different categories of like what we would accept and under what conditions, and then we evaluate the companies to see if they fit those criteria.
And for those companies, if they want to get in contact or if they want to be connected with Norrsken, how would they do? First step would be filling up a form, a contact online.
Yeah. And I think that's really the main thing. Like we try and streamline it, and I think Norrsken has been doing this for enough time that we've learned what works. And so if you're interested in membership, fill out a form. It takes 2 minutes, and then we evaluate all the memberships and we get back to them. Yeah. And that's the way to be part of Norrsken is to be a member of Norrsken.
Yeah. I've known Norrsken for a couple of months right now, and I have a couple of colleagues who work here and take advantage of the co-working space, right? What you guys have built here, it's really invigorating when it comes to the community, and people have this passion for the environment here. You also host a few events. What do you think drove this success of this community?
Yeah, I think to understand the success of Norrsken Barcelona, you have to rewind and understand Norrsken as a whole, because we don't exist in a vacuum. It's not like we created this and we were like, Norrsken brand, we invented it. No, we're using or we're like benefiting from Norrsken's success as a whole. So to take a step back, Norrsken was born in Stockholm in 2016 by the hand of Nico Sadelberg. But I think here what is key is that Norrsken started with the name of someone who was really recognized in the tech scene and who had a lot of reputation in Stockholm. So he could mobilize a lot of key players to say like, oh, this is really exciting. And then I think the other thing is like Norrsken decided to do what we do at a time when impact was not that big of a thing. Like impact startups were not so, 2016. Yeah, they existed. I'm not saying that we're talking about that like, prehistory, but it's true. Like in 2016, it didn't have like the kind of allure or even like ubiquity that it has now. So in 2016, to say we will only, like the funds that we create will only invest in impact and we think that they'll be highly profitable. Or we will build a hub where we prioritize and celebrate impact entrepreneurs. That will be a priority. So one, I think is like that we were pioneers in this movement with startups. We got early into it. And then I think another thing that Norrsken did really well was make it sexy. So I think they put a lot of effort, and we do this the same in Barcelona, right? So we say they, but I'm just saying like what we've learned from then is now being applied as well. So if you translate to Barcelona, it's make sure that we have a really clear mission and a really clear vision. And so when we curate, the fact that when you curate, you know if you're an impact company and you come here, you know that you will find other impact companies that will be interesting and you'll find investors that are interested in you. And there's no, actually, no, there are other players that are relevant. Like I think Impact Hub has been doing this in Barcelona for a long time, and they receive like, kind of like applause for that. We're not the first ones to land here, but we do focus much more on startups. So we have a really clear identity. I think that's one element of what makes us successful is having a really clear identity so that when you're a member, you come in here, you understand what you're getting. I think another one, as I was saying, like make it sexy might be about putting a lot of effort in having great parties. That could be a part. Making sure that our events are really top notch. Making sure that everything that we do, that we may do less things, but that when we do them really well. And then I think the third part has been like being really picky in the location. So Norrsken Barcelona was not like we would have started anywhere. It had to be a great location for it to be successful, right? We wanted this to be a place where if you were coming here, you had a wonderful place next to the beach where then you would find the people that you wanted to find because we've done a good curation, and you would have the good events and the good mobilization to connect. So I think those are the three pillars in a way.
Do you think there's something that plays a huge difference, not huge, but a difference in between the three current active hubs in Stockholm, Kigali, and here?
Yeah, very much so. Actually, we just opened a fourth one since the last time we spoke. So we opened Brussels.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one's a bit more focused on...
4 now, guys, in Brussels as well, already open.
That's more focused on policy and policymakers. I think each hub reflects the ecosystem it's in. So Stockholm, it's a much smaller house, but it's in a much industrial place. It's reformed tram station. There, what you find are top founders from like really high level startups, and everybody knows it. So I think there's less memberships, but there's more concentration of impact entrepreneurs per membership. You don't get teams of 50 people like you might have here. You get smaller teams, higher concentration of entrepreneurs, but that reflects the ecosystem. Stockholm or Sweden is the country with the highest percentage of impact startups per capita, and more than 40% of impact investing goes to impact startups in Stockholm and in Sweden. This is much higher than anywhere else in the world, right? So it makes sense that there you would find that kind of density of impact entrepreneurs. Kigali is a country in Africa that, within the context of Africa, is super business friendly, really pro-business, and at the same time a developing country. And so within a developing country, it's a super, super functional state, but you're not going to find startups that are there. The definition of impact is different. So for us, impact in a country like Kigali means market builders. So if you're building a startup that is allowing for safe payments, something that this might be it wouldn't be impact in Barcelona because it's a startup that does tech, but it's not an impact startup. That would be impact for us in Kigali because you're a market builder. So you're establishing the infrastructure that allows the country to develop. That's another difference. And another difference is, like, in a developing country, a place like Norrsken is like it stands out so much more compared to what's around it. Like Kigali's Norrsken House is an institution in Rwanda as a country, you know, and they have like so much interaction with the president. Like, we've helped with the startup law in Rwanda. Like, it's a true institution. And then in Barcelona, what it reflects is Barcelona is a super international place where second-time founders from the US and the UK maybe are moving to, and you have like, what you have is like a super international place where you have interesting founders that maybe come from other countries that are now moving to Barcelona. It's growing as an impact hub, as a startup hub. It's an exciting city, but it's not the first city that you think of when you think of startups in Barcelona. So in Europe. So it's not Berlin, it's not London, but it's more up and coming. So I think what you sense is this energy of a place that is not super mature, so there aren't that many barriers to entry. I think if you go to San Francisco and you try and if you try to get into the ecosystem, there's so many more barriers to entry. So I think you get this sense of up and comingness, but relaxedness from a city that is not, so established.
There's a big push, I guess, from the government of Catalonia to make Barcelona the biggest hub in tech. Now we have a lot of companies in here.
Yeah. No, I think there's been like in the last, now I'm gonna butcher this stat, but I think it's like the amount, if you look at the graph of amount of startups that have been born in the last 5 years, it's like almost doubled. And so there's definitely a big push, and definitely Barcelona is like growing and proving to be very successful in that sense. But I mean that in the sense that it's not Stockholm, which is the city of impact in Europe in many ways, but it has this energy of, it's definitely a city in tech, but there's up and comingness in a way.
Yeah. What I think was the strategy was being conscious about the environment that Norrsken is in and adapting to its laws and regulations and the situation of the country and of the city in that time.
What have we done to adapt to these regulations and to the city at this time? Is that the question? I guess the thing with Barcelona is that I guess we didn't have too many regulatory issues. So and also it's because we we didn't come here with the help of the Spanish government, so we didn't have to work with them, although we do want to work with them. Like, we want to be friends with them, but we're not a government institution. So in a way, there haven't really been any issues in that sense, or any challenges.
Was there any conflict, or I don't know if they can say that as competing with Actio or Barcelona Active or any other?
No, I mean, I think it's a good question, but I think, I don't think anything would, at least from my sense, I don't think anything would compete with them, just because their goal is that Barcelona only becomes a more attractive and successful impact city. Startup city. So anything that it contributes to a mission should be aligned with their mission. And similar with us, like, we come here, like, Barcelona's mission, Norrsken's mission in Barcelona is to make this a thriving impact ecosystem and a thriving startup ecosystem. So anything that has to this, like, if tomorrow, we want other organizations like Ship2B to succeed. Ship2B is another foundation / investor in impact. We want Impact Hub to also do really well. Like, for us, other players succeeding is only a sign of the ecosystem thriving and that being a good thing.
And that together everyone will uplift each other and every company.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that we look at it. Yeah.
You seem so confident when you're talking, and I believe that you were most of your time surrounded by partners, founders. Was it hard for you to find this confidence?
Well, thank you. But I guess, I think it's interesting, like, what makes you feel confident, because I think when you've been in many different setups, so say you mentioned that you were living in Abu Dhabi and that you had a different career and that you've probably seen yourself in different contexts, right? And you know that maybe the Jaime sitting in this room feels different than the Jaime when he first moved to Abu Dhabi, than the Jaime when, and I think that in my case has helped me see how you can take the same person and put them in a different setup and suddenly feel completely different. So I think one key thing for me here at Norrsken, of like what makes me feel the way that I feel at Norrsken, has a lot to do with the team that we have. So I'm a super big fan of Norrsken's culture. So I think from I joined the team before Norrsken opened, so I was part of the initial team to set it up. But even from my first interview with Norrsken, I was just like very clear that it was a good culture fit. And so I think when you find a good culture fit, you can develop so much more. And I think that's why when you have a good manager, or when you have good coworkers, or when you are in a place that you feel like you're part of it, you flourish, and then you do feel more comfortable. Maybe it's also like I've been here for 2 years now, and so I feel like I get it.
I know you feel free, you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I feel like this is my second home, But I think it's also because I've been here for a long time, but I also think it's because one of the things about being somewhere from the beginning is that you really understand each part of it. Yeah. Like when you're somewhere from the beginning, you really understand each corner of why things happen, how everyone operates, and so you kind of feel like you understand how to navigate it, and also your place in it. But it's not that complex. Like, we're a small team. We're also not a big corporation, so it's not like I'm working for an organization that's like super bureaucratic or really political. It's just, so it's really easy to feel, in my opinion, at ease when you're here.
Well, you mentioned that you joined almost 2 years, or a little bit more than 2 years, which was before actually the hub was even ready. Yeah. Is it what you expected? When you got the role, what did you walk to?
So kind of like, what was I expecting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you only.
How did you feel at the time?
I felt so excited. No, I felt great. I remember when I did my last interview, I just because we're on the beach, I was like, I'm just gonna take my shoes off and walk on the beach. Like, I feel great. I felt really excited because I felt throughout the entire interview process that this was a good fit, and I think you sense. I don't know if you've ever been in companies where you didn't quite fit so well, or in companies where you felt like you weren't, maybe things were like screeching a bit more. And I think if you've had a few experiences, they don't have to be bad, but if you have had a few experiences, you then know when something feels right. And I think, I can't tell you that I expected this, because we didn't. Just because you can't see 10 steps ahead, but I knew what the plan was. So once I joined when there was already a business case for Barcelona. So Barcelona had already been chosen. They already had the building. They already had, Mark was the person who was going to be the CEO during the first year, and then now we have a different general manager. but he was the co-founder and the CEO during the first year, and first year and a bit, and then he was hiring the initial team, and that's when I got hired. But I walked in and I already could have like a rough map of this is the date when we're going to open. This is what Norrsken is. This is what Norrsken houses are. But the rest is pictured. So each time that we would open a floor or each time that we would get a new member, it was like a new thing. So I remember sending the first invoice. And like, I don't send the invoices now. We have an accounting person. But it was just like creating it in the system, pressing the button. We were all so scared, like, is this going to work? So I think it's also the nice part of joining from the beginning is you get a lot of exciting moments of things that, like signing the first contract.
What did you like the most?
I think I like the diversity. Yeah. I think I like the diversity and again, the fact that my role has evolved with the company. So what's been really nice is when I started, my role was simply membership sales. But that also meant maybe creating all the sales materials or designing what a tour would look like. Designing what the internal sales CRM would look like. It's setting all the puzzle pieces so that this can scale and become bigger. And then hiring a team so that the team that's sales is a bit larger. But I think I like the diversity and that my role has changed with the company. So as the company has grown, I have gone to explore different sides of it. Yeah.
Is there any skill that you didn't think would be useful, but at the end you really saw the need?
That's a very good question. A skill that I didn't think would be useful. Well, I think what's actually interesting is that I think it's not quite a skill, but I see how having bad managers is a really good lesson. So having bad managers in the past, or even like not great colleagues or not a great context, I think it's a great lesson for how to be a better, maybe manager, but also better. Both very bad and very good. I think very bad managers and very good managers are like some of the best teachers that I've had. So you don't think that will be a great lesson, and then it is, because you're also better able to like read people. So I think the amount of diversity. I've had a lot of roles that maybe like don't seem, or experiences that maybe didn't seem like they were relevant to this. But the more, because my job was about like talking with so many people, coming to read people, coming to read interests. In the end, the variety of experiences that I've had means that I think you get better at reading situations.
And I think you're good at it.
Thank you so much.
If you zoom out 5 years from now, what would you make sit back and say like, whoa, Norrsken, we did it? What is the Norrsken dream for Barcelona Hub specifically?
5 years from now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely it's about, like, we've been open for a year and a bit. And the first year was just about like getting things running, like it's everything.
Foundation.
It's just like getting the basics working. Like, I mean, obviously things were working, but it's just like making sure you have the capacity. Like you have a hypothesis about what you need, and then you realize you need to hire 3 people more, et cetera, right? The view in the future is a view of going outward. It's a view of engaging with the ecosystem so much more. So how do we create strategic partnerships, and how do we add value and make sure the ecosystem can rely on us, and that we are thinking bigger of what it means to do ecosystem change. So our day-to-day is creating a community and making sure that we have the most inspiring, incredible people here working and connecting them. How do we ensure that we, just so to give you some examples, in Stockholm, they work with the Stockholm Resilience Center. The Stockholm Resilience Center for people who work in climate is pretty well known because they've developed the planetary boundaries. It's a system about what are the, I can go into it, but it's one of the main frameworks used in climate. But they work with them in a partnership to do reports together or to ensure that they add value together. And I think that is a way of exponentially going beyond the day-to-day of a community and ensuring that other actors are working. So for you and with you. So it would be that. And I think it's a question mark of what this looks like, but it's like, how do we become a powerhouse in Barcelona that only helps other people or other organizations and impact?
Well, to be fair, if someone is just starting their career and they see that you work growth and partner and purpose, those terms might sound a little bit abstract to them. So If you could walk us through your day-to-day, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think now my day-to-day has changed from when I started at the beginning to what my role is now. I think so the day-to-day of, because I just want to differentiate, like everything that has to do with sales in Barcelona is not done by me. Like there's other people that I work with who are amazing and they do it and I have to give them credit. So my day-to-day looks like, right now we're exploring partnerships, so how to work smartly with corporates. And we wouldn't work with any corporate, so it's corporates that can actually add value to startups. So there's a lot of thinking about what companies could be interesting for this, what ways could we work with them. So it might be look like talking with a lot of these kind of companies. It might look like thinking about what this would look like, and there's some brainstorming and kind of doing drafts of what that looks like. Then there's a part when you're a manager, then it also means like managing I don't manage my team, but I work with my team. So talking with them and aligning on goals. And it's kind of funny because when you ask me what you do all day, I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And then there's other things, like, I don't know, if there's ad hoc things in sales that might be like a big event proposal where someone's like, we want to do a giant conference at Norrsken. It's like, okay, well, I don't know how that would look like, but trying to figure out that deal. Yeah.
Is there any message that you craft for the companies that you are reaching out that you'd like to tell them? So if, for instance, if you are outsourcing a partnership and you want to...
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing with corporates that we work with and that we aim to work with is for any company that is interested in aligning more with impact or aligning more with, it can be impact and there can be many things. Sometimes it's education, sometimes it's sustainability, and they want to be leaders in that conversation. Norrsken's great for that because we have the most engaged community of startups and people in impact. So one, we already have the community in-house, but two, our brand carries a lot of weight internationally. So what we aim to do with partners is further whatever it is that they think is a theme and impact that should be furthered. If we are aligned with that, by joining forces, like that could become better. So one example is you could have, and then it's just developing that with that partner, whether that looks like a giant event series, whether that means doing like strategic introductions that can help both startups and the corporate. It can look in many ways in that way, but it's truly like companies, once you get to a certain size of a corporate, you're not looking only at like producing products. You have a certain amount of capital that you should be investing in. What kind of company do you want to be in tomorrow? And that also means helping those visions happen, and that you need to do with partners. And so that's kind of what we aim to do with our corporate partners.
Yeah. Changing a little bit of the lens, and when we talk about the storytelling of Norrsken, it does elevate much more purpose over profit. Have you ever had this two subject crashing in your hands, or have you had to deal with that?
Of like impact over profit?
Yeah.
Like that. So it's actually interesting because what Norrsken says is actually impact and profit go hand in hand. So what's interesting about Norrsken is that the impact narrative for a very long time, or just like in general, even now, I think the thing with the word impact or companies that work on impact is that it is perceived as you are sacrificing your potential for profit. No, old school narrative would say, if you want to make money, don't focus on impact. That's for people who want to be do-gooders, but if you want to make money, just work on a company that maybe is doing consulting, banking, oil and gas, but anything. It doesn't have to, like, it can be consumer goods, it can be packaging, like, plenty of companies. Like, if you want to make money, work on those. Like, look at the big companies in the world. What do they focus on? And what we say is, like, that's a fallacy, and it's like a false dichotomy. You can actually work on impact and make a huge profit. Like, Norrsken, in a way, like, if we're really honest, like, actually what it's doing is, like, trying to work within capitalism to have a different type of capitalism. To say, we're not trying to say, no, we're not trying to make money and impact should happen separately. I think that's more what the old school philanthropy model was. So the old school philanthropy model is you can make a lot of money and then on the side give money to a foundation. And Norrsken is a foundation, but like a more typical foundation. So, or give money to nonprofits. Super valid. I think nonprofits a lot of them would do great work, and I think they're still necessary. But what Norrsken's trying to do is, like, businesses who do good can also be some of the most profitable. And that's why Norrsken the funds that we have, so besides the co-workings, the hubs that we have, we also have investment funds. They invest only in impact startups. And because we think that they are the ones that will give us the biggest returns. So it's changing this narrative of businesses that work for good can be great money creators. And that's actually what we're trying to change. So to say we back impact companies because we think they can be highly profitable and really necessary.
It is true. I think it has changed the narrative, right? When we grow up, it depends on the generation as well. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but when we grow up, we don't necessarily connect being climate or working in impact with profitability. It is usually that sense of being more relaxed in life and just not looking for anything profitable. But for those companies, for instance, looking to invest in climate, or companies in climate looking for their funds for the upcoming year, let's say 2026 and 2028, because I've talked with some friends. Is there any specific sectors that they should be looking for?
So the question is like, what sectors will be most interesting in the coming years?
That's absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for rephrasing
it. I wanted to make sure that I understood it.
Yeah. Well, what are the sectors that Norrsken
focuses
the most?
Yeah. No, and I think here the truth is, again, we're sector agnostic, but because we focus on scalable technologies, so startups, in the end, that really falls within a few buckets.
Okay.
I think that impact really embarks so many teams. Like a company that works in healthcare is so far, a company that works in healthcare might focus on something completely different than a company that does like carbon accounting, but they both are impact, right? So because scalable technologies tend to focus more on climate, health, and climate, health, and then some education. But that is the nature of scalable technologies, meaning there are also UN Sustainable Development Goals in gender equality, but it's harder to achieve that with technology. So there will be less startups in technology that achieve that in a scalable way, because those are goals that maybe have to do more with policy or have to do with more like this. So in the startup sector, I would say climate is a big one, but then again, climate means so many things. Like climate means water, it means circular fashion, it might mean sustainable food systems, it can mean accounting tools, but just carbon accounting. So when you say climate, it could be like so many things. With healthcare, it's the same. There could be a software that focuses on helping therapists be more effective to something that's actually developing medicines, right? So when you ask me which one will be most relevant, the truth is I'm not the person to who would know this. Like I can't tell you what the biggest issues or the most successful companies will be in the coming years in sector. I can tell you names of specific companies that I think will be really successful because I know them in Norrsken and I can see that they have a good track record. But in terms of sector, I wish I knew the answer, but I can't tell you.
So no trends.
I think what's interesting is there was a trend there was lots of focus on things that had to do with like accounting and like software. So the one of the biggest discussions now in climate is, up until not so long ago, when we meant climate startups, they meant like it was like software startups. So and that also reflects like what the startup scene looked like. So investment in startups was apps, it was SaaS, so softwares, meaning companies that didn't focus on hardware.
Yes.
They didn't build infrastructure. They weren't trying to develop batteries or things that were like physical. It was all software. And perfectly great, lots of amazing startups in that sector. A lot of the conversations in climate is like, how much climate can you really solve by just doing software? Because some things in climate have to be infrastructure and hardware, right? Like if you want to have renewable energies, you need solar panels and you need wind farms, and that is infrastructure. So one of the main themes in impact in a way is like, to what degree should startups focus more on hardware? And if you really want to have an impact, then you should focus on giant investments that have to do with hardware. The issue there is that VC funding which is what fuels the startup industry, is focused on returns within 3 to 4 years, sometimes up to 10. But hardware investments mean huge amounts of money that maybe need longer returns, or maybe just that they're very risky. Like if you're going to give like billions and billions and billions and billions for something physical, that's a much bigger risk than say, well, you have a software startup that will be cheaper than building a whole wind farm. No. So, anyways, I think the trend is that it's going more towards hardware, but it's one of the pain points of the industry.
Okay.
But listen, if you want more trends, there's people who are smarter than me, you know.
No, I think it makes the perfect sense as well, and it's clarifying for me because when we actually think about sustainability and everything, we think about softwares, not really putting the hands. And yes, solar panels and plants and all of this. And I was reading a lot. Not in this subject, but it's especially because of the COP30 that will be in Belém, Brazil. And I was very excited with that, and I wish I would be there. But talking about this, and thank you for the answer, a little bit more globally, don't know if it fits us as well, but with everything, this commercial war and everything happening in the US and China, do you think that reflects in Europe and in the VC funds that you guys have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that's one of the questions that people ask themselves, like how is the Trump administration changing the whole impact investing, sector, no? And so I think my understanding there is that what it has done is it has revealed what impact investors were there because they really believed in it. So impact investors might be like Norrsken VC, for instance, is 100% impact. We only invest in impact companies. And what it did is it revealed what kind of VCs or investors are investing in impact because they truly believe that that's what's necessary for the future and what's necessary, and because they think it's a good investment, versus which ones maybe had that label and flaunted being impact investors because it was good marketing or it was the trend. So it has, for instance, like made lots of corporates and most companies pause for a second to be like, why are we doing impact? And the ones that had it in their DNA being like, we are impact, continue full on doubling down. The ones that weren't sure why they were doing it maybe are reviewing it, and the ones that were like, oh, this was full marketing. Great, we don't have to do the ESG thing anymore, then maybe let's not do it. So you see that in how companies are investing or not.
So that could be as well a huge opportunity for those who really care to take advantage and grow the maximum out of that.
That's
and making a bigger impact. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, any impact is an impact, but if the impact is coming genuinely for those who actually care.
What it shows, like people who really believe in it, like Norrsken just genuinely believes that impact and profit can go hand in hand, and that they're the best investments. So, and that it's what the planet needs. So we'll just continue on that path and say like, okay, if there's detractors or less capital in the market for these startups, we'll continue doing this. And we think that what I mean is like people who invest in impact because they really think that the climate crisis is real, they're like, well, even if the Trump administration is happening, we still think that these scientific reports that say that in 50, 30, 20 years, these things will happen to the climate are still true. And so we should continue acting accordingly.
Yeah. When you think about impact, do you have anxiety or hope?
It depends on how much I think about it. No, I think I've gone through different phases, and I think generally I'm someone who's not a extremist with anything, and that I try. So on a personal level, whenever I just see that I'm a small speck in the world. Like the truth is, I try and live according to like my values and act according to my values, but do I think that my individual contribution to my recycling and my shopping accordingly has a massive impact? No. I still think that I should act as good as I can, but I think I'm just realistic of like, what is my real impact? It's not that big, so maybe my anxiety shouldn't be that big. So in moments where maybe I was more like, we are doomed, nothing you do is enough, maybe I had moments that were a bit more like this, and then it's just like, yeah, but I still want to have like a nice life and I still want to be happy. And maybe that means that now I travel less by plane and I travel more by train. And that's just a thing that I do. And that's also nice. So you can shift things, but...
It's a relationship, right? Because you do concessions, you do concessions, but you also live your life.
Yeah, so I guess I don't have that much anxiety now, but I also, because I think I think that comes from just being like, I'm not that big of a deal, you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to live according to my values, but my impact personally is not that big. And I think another reason is because I think I work at Norrsken, and Norrsken's are a super optimistic organization that focuses on solutions. And so we as an organization are like, okay, well, we focus on solutions and that's why we invest in these companies, that's why we have to do this hub. So I spend my day in the narrative of solutionism and kind of like optimism. And I think that has also affected me quite a bit.
There's a balance, right? Because at the same time you were doing your part, so you were working something that it's working towards to the impact. And I think this is everyone. If we are too radical in everything, life becomes really hard. But if we balance the things and we try to do our part and working with what we can, because also we are humans, huh? We won't be steady all the time. We are sometimes like waves. Sometimes we're more, sometimes we're less. And if we do not respect those waves, if we do not go against that, it's a little bit hard because it's like punching the wall sometimes. But I asked you that because I was actually watching the interview Chris Anderson had with Nicholas Adalbert, in the Impact last year. And he said something that really resonated with me, and I'm going to quote him. He said that every time there's a new technology, every time a group of people come together, there's a new set of adjacent possibilities that we can explore. Those things hold the potential for the future. And that was so, clarifying for me, because it fills me with optimism. And I think that at the same time, it goes really hand to hand. And like in the essence, what Norrsken is doing, because it is feeling this and making all these ramifications of optimism, of impact happening in the world, happening in Barcelona, happening in Kigali, happening in Brussels right now, but in Stockholm. But it is us doing our part and making our movement, and then we will look behind and says like, oh, that started that day or a long time ago.
Yeah, like everything has ramifications and also I think it goes on both directions, right? It's like there's plenty of like good intentioned solutions or movements that then you see they also have a negative effect, and then there's also a lot of good efforts that, thanks to those good efforts, in the end, it snowball to something much better. So
one thing that I would like to touch very quickly is when you talked about impact washing, for instance, there's some people.
Greenwashing?
Yeah, there's greenwashing, but some companies do really the climate in the core. Some of them are doing just for the marketing. Can you spot those companies? Is it clear for you, or is there anything that you look when you were searching for a company for Norrsken that you're like, okay, this company?
As members, and as members, we focus more on what are you actually doing, and are you working 100% on impact, and are you using a scalable technology? So if that's kind of binary. Is 100% what you're doing towards impact, yes or no? No, and then we can say like, okay, but you're doing it as a giant corporation, then it's not a fit. So I think for members, there's less companies where we see there's greenwashing because you're either impact or you're not. And then if you're not impact, I just look at whether what you do adds value to an impact company, right? If we're talking about corporate partners or companies in general, like if you're asking me like, as a company in general, how do you spot greenwashing? I think it's not always super obvious, but I guess you can always look at what does a company do, and like if they only have a page that says like our commitment to sustainability, and it's a page that is kind of like wishy-washy, kind of general, and it just talks about their commitment to sustainability, but nothing of this translates to what their actual activity is. So are they actually changing any of their supply chains? Are they actually changing any of their suppliers? Are they changing any of their packaging? Is that actually translating or no? And is it translating into like packaging 5% recycled? And it's like, well, maybe. So, and I think that's also, and it's not to like I mean, I guess I'm also a bit of a realist. Like, I don't expect every company to be perfect, because if we really want like a scaled transition, we have to hope that companies need to be able to improve. And so you can't just like bash all companies for not being perfect immediately. So I think that's the starting point. But then from there, also be realistic of how many companies really are trying or not. I think you can try and look there. But you only get so much information from the website, because the website shows you what a company wants you to see. So I think you need to have deeper conversations with the company later down about like what's really happening behind.
And good to others. Well, that was great. I love it. There is one last question that I'd like to make is, what is one perspective you have for the future?
Oh, well, I think you asked me to have like clear opinions and like, you know, be someone with opinions, and I'm not someone who has that many like I think I'm someone who maybe doesn't even have like that many like strong opinions. I'm more of like but one perspective that I have for the future. So is it for me personally, or just like in the world in general?
For you.
For me? Oh, that's easier. Okay, I thought you were asking me for the world. One perspective for the future that I have? You know, I think throughout my career and everything I do, I never see super far ahead. I'm always kind of like just doing one step at a time. If you would have asked me like 10 years ago, was I aiming towards this? No, I was living in a different country. So I think I don't really see that far ahead. But I think what I really have taken from people I admire is just to just make sure that you're doing good work in the moment and do things of quality and be kind and considerate to the people around you. And things work out then. So I think it's just how people are wired, but some people are wired to have 10-year goals and like really work towards them and have things super clear, and some people are not like me, and we're the eternally pivoting people. And for that, I think just do good work and be a good person. I think that's just truly how I work, how I look at the future.
So good to hear when we resonate with someone, you know, like, because sometimes I feel like, am I doing something wrong for not having this 10 years plan goal set in my mind?
No, yeah, and I think for me that's really useful to talk to so many different people, because you see people who are very successful and they're like in positions of so much responsibility, and that might be something you want or you don't, but you talk to them and not everybody had a straight arrow path or like a clear visibility, and I'm just not that kind of person. So I think I focus on like their here and now, being smart about how you open doors. So talk to people, make sure that you're going to events, open doors, but in the end, just like do good work, be a good person. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for watching one more episode. I'm delighted with this meeting. It was really good. Thank you. Subscribe, watch, and yeah, leave your comments. Bye now.